Buckle up, awesome 4 fishing reports. We're going to start at Lorain to Cleveland on the Lake Erie shoreline. All you guys looking ahead 2 weeks and seeing this mild weather, hook up the rigs and get down there because the walleyes are just stupid right now. Then to the St. Clair River, where we're going to talk to you about river jigging for walleyes. That bite's equally as hot. Then all the way up to the Upper Peninsula for the last probably couple weeks of the real fishing season. They're out of the port of Escanaba for, again, big fall walleyes. Then over to Muskegon, and what do you know? We're fishing for walleyes again, but we're also throwing perch into the mix here in front of the sand docks. Stay tuned, 4 great reports, 1 stop here on the Hot Bites Fishing Report. You know, the fishing at Lorain to Cleveland right now on the Lake Erie shoreline has been nothing short of stupid. There's no other way to describe it. Anyone can catch fish right now if you can get out in a boat or you get out on a pier wall. Even shorelines and rock riprap have been producing lots of keeper-sized fish. So let's talk just real quickly. We've touched on this in earlier reports, but we're just going to keep you onto it. Our friend Gary Zart from Blue Dolphin Walleye Charters, who's basing himself right now out of Cleveland because that's where the bite has been hot and heavy. He's reporting to me that you can catch fish on pretty much anything you put in the water for the next couple of weeks. P10s, bandits, DHJ12s, and 14s are all catching fish. Now I grabbed a couple of my favorite ones color-wise, the pink lemonade and also this kind of this funky pattern. What I'm trying to show you guys here is just something bright, loud, that has a lot of contrast. Big baits, you want to use big baits. This isn't the time to use, you know, deep juniors and things like that. No, this is full-size crankbaits, 5.5 to 7 inch long crankbaits. The fish are feeding to get ready for the fall time of the season. Now, how do you set these baits up? Well, there's a couple of cool schools of thought. One is, if you have a smaller boat, I'm going to talk to you guys first, and that is that you don't have to go a long ways out. You can literally, Gary tells me, go out in 12, 14, 15 foot of water just outside the shoreline pier breakwalls and start trolling down the shorelines, angling yourself out towards 20. You're going to find a lot of fish that are associating to the shorelines. You're going to find big ones in there too, but if you're looking for just a great batch of 4 and 5 pounders for eating, this is going to be your tactic. And in that situation, you're just going to flatline them out 30, 40, 50 foot back to get you down maybe 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, somewhere in there in 12, 14 foot of water. Now, if you're going offshore, you can go ahead and play the game of reading your graph and set the baits 3, 4 foot above the fish's head. The water clarity isn't bad right now, and we're looking forward right now at a couple of weeks in the 40s down in that northern Ohio area. So it's going to be pretty tolerable weather. It doesn't look like nasty winds. Now is the time to cash in on the best fall fishing of the year, and it runs all the way from the Port Clinton area all the way to Cleveland. But this week's report, Lorain to Cleveland, hot, hot, hot. Speed 1.3 to 1.5 miles an hour. Just get with the wind, troll with the wind. Don't fight it. Don't be silly. Get your boards out, let them track right. There's so many fish, you almost can't do it wrong. Big crankbaits, get your boat, get down to Ohio, put it in the water and have some fun. Hey guys, you know, right now, mid-November, right before Thanksgiving, you're thinking holidays. What you should really be thinking about is getting down to Wilson's Marine, one of their 4 locations in southeast Michigan, and making your best deal on next spring's fishing boat. You know, Brad and the folks over at Wilson's have got a whole bunch of current year 2019 model years that are about to go non-current, and they're willing to make great deals. So check in with one of the salesmen at Wilson Marine, make your best deal. They'll put that boat away for you for the rest of the winter, and in the spring when you're ready to go fishing or recreational boating, they'll have it there for you and you'll be no worse for the wear. Hey, visit Wilson Marine here in southeast Michigan, your fishing boat headquarters. Now guys, we're talking about the St. Clair River, and each week right now, this time of year, we're going to be bouncing back and forth between the St. Clair River, the Detroit River, and the western basin of Lake Erie. Why? Because this is just go time for those bodies of water. The big fish in all of these systems, from Port Huron all the way to Monroe Luna Pier, are bulking up. You're finding them in shallow water, you're finding them feeding heavily on big crankbaits. Last week we talked about this Lake St. Clair, and Captain Justin and Eric both were doing well there. Today it's the St. Clair River. Now, our contact at the St. Clair River says that the whole river from Port Huron all the way to Marysville is kicking out awesome fish. Now, where are some of the hot spots and what are the presentations? Stay with me. They're slip drifting with the current, remembering to stay vertical, and that means you're going to want to use your bow mount trolling motor in conjunction. Always face the wind when you're trying to slip, and after a little bit of practice, if you're not adept at it, you'll get the hang of it. You're trying to keep that line straight up and down vertical so that the jig you use, you can just play bouncy with the bottom. You're literally just almost feeling for bottom and then lifting it up a couple inches and dropping it back down. Now, the bait of choice so far has been a fat boy jig with a finesse minnow. Now, you can bounce around in colors. If the water's a little bit dirty, which it's not right now, it's beautiful, clean in the St. Clair River, you can go to more of a natural color like a smoke, or a blue ice is a really good winter color. If you get a little bit of tint to the water, you can also start to color things up by adding oranges or chartreuses to a black base plastic. Remember, contrast against black is really one of the most easy things for a fish to pick out. So like a black and chartreuse, a black and orange, something where it gives that break point for a fish to pick that bait out. When you're dealing with cleaner water, then the more subtle natural colors like a minnow, and a ghost minnow color, or a blue finesse is going to also, or you could have a blue with a little bit of gold or silver fleck in it. Those are always good choices. But right now, from Port Huron to Marysville, one of the hot spots they pointed out, south of the Black River, right dead in the main channel, 32 feet of water, and again, slow vertical presentation. The fish are just going to hang on you. You'll feel the weight. Don't get too crazy when you're in a fast current by lifting your jig too far or moving your jig too erratically. Cold water, fast current means slow, subtle jigging. I call it down jigging, where you're 3 inches off the bottom at rest, and you drop your jig and pound the bottom and just lift it back up. The fish will be there on your lift, or you'll just feel them load up your rod on the hold. That's probably one of the best tips I could give anybody when you're cold water vertical jigging in rivers, is to practice down jigging rather than rip jigging. So right now, St. Clair River, try it out. The weather's going to look good for the next 2 weeks. Get out on the water and fill up your boat. If you're looking for a great, affordable outbuilding for whatever your needs is, check out my friends at Midwest Steel Carports up in Grant, Michigan. They have awesome outbuildings at affordable prices with quality craftsmanship. That's Midwest Steel Carports up in Grant. Check them out online. Hey, we're going to jump up to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan in the port town of Escanaba. Now, Escanaba, as you all know, is in the central Upper Peninsula, and you're thinking, John, why in the world would you talk about fishing in Escanaba when we know there's no safe ice? That's exactly why, because there's no safe ice. Because right now, this time of the year, all the way up until ice, this is the best time to go to Escanaba, get your boat in the water, and get it wet and catch some of the biggest walleyes the entire Lake Michigan system has to offer. These walleyes flood in following the bait fish in the fall time of the year, and they fill up Little Badenoch. I mean, they jam it full. It is some of the easiest and best fishing. Now, when I say easy, I don't mean it's easy. I mean the fish are there. It's still up to you to put your bait and your presentation on them. Let's talk about 3 different ways to catch these fish. The first and most typical way is open water trolling with either flat lines all the way out to 3 colors of lead. Again, big crankbaits. Big old gaudy crankbaits are going to be what people want. Now, if you're going to go up to Escanaba, I would suggest you have a selection of gold crankbaits, shiny gold with different customizations made to those. Now lots of manufacturers have those, but gold seems to be a really good base color up in the Escanaba waters on Little Bay de Noc. Now, you're going to go ahead and run spreads of 1, 2, and 3 colors and basically just be reactive to what set is catching the fish. You're going to want to spread them out 5, 10, 15, 20 down. You're going to see these marks on your screen. They're probably not going to run from you with these temperatures, and you'll be able to mark those fish and then try to hone in with just knowing and understanding where your baits run. Now, second really under talked about presentation up there is slow jigging, really slow drag jigging a big red-tailed chub. Now, if you mark pods of fish, let's say on center reef or first or third reef, typically those fish will bite, but they may not always be going on a crankbait if they're belly to the bottom. One of the best ways to catch those fish is to get right on top of them. First, find them with your Garmin, find them with your electronics, get right on top of them, spotlight over top of them, and then drop a big juicy redhead down to them and just slowly inch around where you're finding the marks. Drag and slow hopping those red tails is one of those presentations that's really effective in the fall of the year because, again, these fish are on the feed bag. They're conditioned to feed even when their brain is telling them they're just laying at rest. They're not going to pass up a big juicy red tail. So that's one of the second presentation. The third is the way we just filmed our show a month ago up there, and that is ripping shiver minnows. Now, you might not want to rip them quite as hard. It's more of a lift and fall right now with the shiver minnow. You could also replace your shiver minnow with a vibrating bait like a cicada or some type of a really tight blade bait. That's going to be a really good secondary presentation for super cold water fish. So blade baits or shiver minnows, dragging a red tail, or trolling is going to put these Escanaba jumbos in the boat. You know, if you get up there and need accommodations, there's two places that we work closely with. The first one right there on the bay itself with its own boat dock and everything, Lindbergh's Cove Resort. The guys at Lindbergh's have been serving fishermen for generations. They've got an awesome spot right there just down from the boat launch. You can put your boat in, you can go ahead and tie your boat up right to their docks. They got beautiful little cabins right there on the grounds. They've got everything a guy needs to have a good 3, 4, 5, even a week-long stay. Now, if you're looking for a quickie stay, the Bayview Motel, just up the road right in Gladstone, the Bayview Motel is a fishing-friendly place. These guys make their living servicing fishermen. They've got plug-ins. They've got a little bait and tackle store right there at the hotel. So you got everything in one spot, and you're right next to the Delona restaurant. So the Bayview Motel or Lindbergh Cove Resort, two of the great partners that keep these reports coming to you here out of Escanaba. We're here at Snug Harbor Outdoors, and one of the things that we choose to stand in front of all the time is because it's always behind our boat, which is Dreamweaver spoons, spin doctors, and all kinds of the great stuff that Dreamweaver makes. You know, in the next few weeks, Captain Alex and I are going to start bringing you little specials, how-to specials, great ideas for next open water season on your Great Lakes salmon and trout adventures of how you can integrate great effective products. And Alex will start to teach you also on one of the most important things for being a successful salmon and trout fisherman is color. How do you know when to choose a first starting spot with color, both in spin doctors and in lure assortment, as well as how do you know when to start pulling stuff out of the water and putting different stuff in? Does sunrise, does sun angle, and all of those things come into play? So stay tuned on a weekly basis as myself and Captain Alex bring you the answers to these questions, answers brought to you by Dreamweaver. Our last report of the day, probably the best report, so put on your seatbelts. Muskegon, Michigan and Muskegon Lake are coming right down the pike at you. Now there's several good bite options here in the town of Muskegon. The first one is trolling for nice sized walleyes. We've got a picture report up right now on just before the video report about a great catch that a guy just had trolling. Now, there's two different ways. You can troll the traditional way in the channel, which is big shallow diving crankbaits, all right? You're going to let them out anywhere from 50 to 100 foot back, and you're going to run a split shot about 6 foot in front of them. That's the traditional way of fishing in the channel. Now, if you find the fish are staging just a little bit deeper, you could also put a lipped bait on, but typically guys fish this channel bite during the night or the low light periods. In other words, right away, real early in the morning for a few hours, and then again at dusk, right out until midnight, 1 o'clock, until it's pitch dark, and you got a chance at these big, nice, juicy Muskegon Lake walleyes. Now, there's another bite that's been happening. I don't have coordinates. I don't exactly have a firm grip on where this is happening, but trust me when I tell you, there are guys who are starting to zero in on an open lake suspended bite for these fall walleyes as well. We've got good, reliable guys telling us they're catching these same fish kind of beta-nox style in a way, which is 1, 2, 3, 4 colors of lead with those deep and shallow diving big crankbaits, and they're setting them out and just putting a spread of staggered baits all the way out, and then they're just reacting to which boards are going, knowing what bait they had on and how much lead they had out. Then they start to mimic and match so that they're putting more of those baits out and letting the fish talk to them. But man, an open water bite for big Muskegon Lake walleyes in the fall would be something that is awesome. You got to come here and just put your time in. I can't give you the magic formula, but I can tell you it is happening. So get out there away from the channel and start exploring the shorelines and the structure areas of Muskegon Lake, because this bite is there to be had if you can figure it out. Now, another thing that's happening, which is really turning people on, is we've got a really good perch bite right in front of the sand docks and First Street. Now, it's perch spreaders and minnows, just dropping them right down. You could use pounders, you can use spreaders, you can use any number of different perch rigs. Domke Outdoors makes a really cool perch rig that's a custom made rig for Lake Erie that I bet would work great here as well. But you're going to want to get your bait and get your rigs and all your supplies right here where you see me standing on site right now at Snug Harbor Outdoors. Now, Snug Harbor Outdoors is located on the north side of Muskegon Lake, right out in front by where you're going to go ahead and enter the boat launch area. This is an awesome little store, and it is chock full of everything that works and applies to this Muskegon Lake and greater shoreline bite in the summertime out of Muskegon Harbor on Lake Michigan. This is one of those diamond in the rough little spots. It's got all that stuff that's applicable. This is exactly what fits into the Fisherman's Digest profile of a great local tackle store, serving a community not only with all the right baits, but also the information. Guys who know what's going on, guys who are willing to tell you what's going on and get you close to the bite or right on top of the bite, and it's up to you then to refine that bite. So, and also next door, if you're looking for good accommodations, the Snug Harbor Resort. That's what's kind of cool right here on Muskegon, is that the resort and the outdoor store are right next to each other, and they're right outside where you're going to put your boat in. So Snug Harbor Resort and Snug Harbor Outdoors, here to service the Muskegon Lake fishermen year-round. We're looking forward to ice fishing, but for the next couple weeks, keep that boat around because good fishing is to be had. Hey, thanks for joining us on today's video Hot Bites Fishing Report. We love bringing these reports to you from all these cool stops like here today at Snug Harbor Outdoors. These are the nuts and bolts of what makes small town fishing and having a great experience in all these areas of Michigan so much fun, is being able to visit our friends and talk fishing and then bring that information to you here on a weekly basis. We'll see you next week.